The biblical account of Joshua and the walls of Jericho is one of the great stories of antiquity. After the death of Moses, leadership of the children of Israel fell to Joshua. His task was to lead Israel back into the Promised Land and reclaim it for the Hebrews. One of the great obstacles was the walled fortress city of Jericho. Under the direction of the Lord, the children of Israel marched around the city once each day for 6 days. Then, on the 7th day, they marched around the city 7 times. Afterward, the people of God were commanded to shout and blow trumpets. At this point, one of the grand miracles of Scripture occurred. The walls of this great city fell. The only survivors of Jericho were Rahab and her family, a reward for saving the lives of 2 Jewish spies who had earlier entered the walled fortress. While we accept this story as fact based on its inclusion in the Bible, is there any archaeological support for this biblical event? What may come as a surprise to the critics of Scripture, the answer to this question is yes. The ancient city of Jericho has been discovered by biblical archaeologists and has had 4 major excavations of this site. First by Carl Wetzinger from 1907 through 1909, then by Egyptologist John Garson in the 1930s, then by noted British archaeologist Kathleen Kinnan from 1952 through 1958, and currently by Dr. Brant Wood. All 4 excavations produce startling results. They have established that the famous city of the falling walls of Jericho is historical fact. All 4 excavations prove that the city of Jericho was at one time a strongly fortified walled city built on a hill. They also confirm that the walls of the city fell outward, unusual in itself because most walls around a conquered city fall inward. By falling outward, the stones of the fallen wall would act as steps, allowing Israel to easily enter Jericho. Dr. John Garston, who conducted the second major excavation of Jericho, noted that the walls fell outward so completely the attackers would be able to clamber up and over the ruins of the city. The excavations also established that when the walls fell, the city of Jericho was burnt, exactly as we are told in Joshua 6:24. Archaeologist Kathleen Kinnan wrote that the destruction was complete. Walls and floors were blackened or reddened by fire, and every room was filled with fallen bricks. Additionally, pots containing large amounts of grain were discovered within the defeated city. This established that the city was not taken by a long siege, which would have caused the occupants to consume all or most of the grain. Instead, it provides evidence that the city fell suddenly, matching the testimony of Scripture. There was, however, one section of the city where the walls were still intact. This section of the wall reveals the remains of houses that were built up against the wall. Again, this would match what we find in Scripture, for Rahab and all her household were kept safe during the siege. Her house, Scripture reveals, was built up against the city wall, allowing the 2 Jewish spies to climb out her window and down the wall by the aid of a scarlet cord. Dr. Bryant Wood has provided considerable evidence from the city that proves the walls fell somewhere around the end of the Late Bronze Age, around 1400 BC. Debris from the city has been dated by carbon-14 test to around 1410 BC. The type of pottery, along with stratigraphic considerations, and the discovery of Egyptian scarabs with the names of pharaohs contemporary with that time, has led to this conclusion. As was mentioned in our last study, physical evidence has shown the Exodus to have occurred around 1450 BC. If we take 40 years for the wilderness wandering, we have the date for Israel entering the Promised Land around 1410 BC, and the Battle of Jericho shortly afterward. Therefore, the time when the walls fell and the city was burnt matches the time of the biblical event. Once again, what was taken only by faith can now be established by archaeological facts. The book of Joshua also tells us that after Jericho, Joshua captured and burnt the city of Hazor.
And Joshua at that time turned back, and took Hazor, and smote the king thereof with the sword. For Hazor before time was the head of all those kingdoms. Joshua 11:10.
In 1990, excavations of Hazor began under the direction of Amnon ben Tur from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. They discovered that this ancient Canaanite city fell at about the same time as Jericho, and that during its siege the city had been destroyed by fire, again matching what we read in Scripture.
And they smote all the souls that were therein with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. There was not any left to breathe, and he burnt Hazor with fire. Joshua 11:11.
There are many other finds in archaeology that establishes the Bible as historically accurate. In fact, nothing in archaeology has ever proven any event found in the Bible to be inaccurate. But find after find has provided evidence for what the Bible records as history. For years, critics of the Bible claimed that David, the famous and beloved king of Israel, only existed in the annals of Scripture, and that there was no physical evidence outside of Scripture that David ever lived. Then archaeologists uncovered this ancient stone with an inscription bearing the name of David, king of Israel. Additionally, King David's tomb has been discovered alongside the tomb of Solomon, David's son. Once more, archaeological evidence has closed the mouth of critics. The books of 1st and 2nd Kings, along with 1st and 2nd Chronicles, are often the focal point of criticism by those who wish to discredit the Bible. However, the kings and events recorded in those books have a great deal of archaeological evidence supporting the history of what the Bible records. In 1868, Reverend Frederick Augustus Klein, a missionary to what is now modern Jordan, came across a large black stone buried in the sand. The stone excited Klein, causing him to make a rubbing of the inscription on the stone. The local Arabs, noting Klein's excitement, believed that there might be some valuable ore such as gold in the stone. The Arabs began to heat the stone and then suddenly cool it with water, causing the stone to burst and destroying a good amount of the inscription on the stone. Fortunately, because of Klein's rubbing, the stone with its full inscription has been restored. This black stone, known as the Moabite stone, provides a great deal of evidence for what is recorded in Scripture. Until the discovery of this stone, most historians scoffed at the existence of the Moabites. Now, thanks to the Moabite stone, their existence is universally accepted. The stone provides the testimony of Mesha, the king of Moab. In 2 Kings 3:4-5, we are told that Mesha was the king of Moab. The Moabite stone tells of the death of the Jewish king Ahab. Likewise, we are told in 2 Kings 3:5 that Mesha attacked after the death of King Ahab. The Moabite stone mentions the God of Israel and calls him by name, Yahweh, showing that the Moabites knew of the Hebrew God. Throughout the inscription, Mesha speaks of the Moabite national god, Chemoth. This false god is mentioned several times in the Old Testament in relation to the nation of Moab. The stone also makes reference to King Omni of Israel, the son of Ahab, mentioned in 1 Kings 16:23-28. Finally, the inscription closes with a reference to the House of David, providing collaborating evidence for the historical existence of King David. A few other examples of archaeology supporting what is recorded in Scripture include the following. Pharaoh Shishak's campaign into Israel, found in 1 Kings 14, is also inscribed on the walls of the Temple of Amun in Thebes. King Jehu, whose life and deeds are found in 1 and 2 Kings, is mentioned by name on this Assyrian obelisk, establishing him as a real king of Israel. The fall of Samaria, as told in 2 Kings 17 and 18 by Assyrian king Sargon II, is also recorded on his palace walls. Sennacherib's campaign against Judah is not only found in 2 Kings 18, but is also recorded on the Taylor Prism. The fall of Jerusalem to King Nebuchadnezzar is recorded in both 2 Kings 24 and the Babylonian Chronicles. The fall of Babylon to the Medes and Persians recorded in Daniel 5 and the freeing of the Babylonian captives recorded in Ezra 1 and 6 are likewise recorded on the Cyrus cylinder. King Ahasuerus, husband of Queen Esther mentioned in the Book of Esther, has his name inscribed on this tablet, listing him as the mighty king of the Medes and Persians, just as the scriptures state. During the reign of King Hezekiah, from about 725 BC to about 697 BC, he had a tunnel dug in Jerusalem to be used as an aqueduct. 2 Kings 20:20 tells us Hezekiah made a pool and a conduit and brought water into the city. Although the existence of this tunnel has been known for several centuries, it was not until very recently that it has been systematically investigated. According to 2 Chronicles 32:30, the tunnel ran to the springs of Gihon. The investigation shows that the Hezekiah tunnel runs to the springs of Gihon, the same springs mentioned several times throughout the Old Testament. These are but a few of the many people and events found in Scripture for which archaeology has provided additional evidence. Jewish archaeologist Nelson Gleeck has correctly observed that no archaeological discovery has ever controverted a biblical reference. Archaeologist William F. Albright wrote, "Discovery after discovery has established the accuracy of innumerable details and has brought increased recognition to the value of the Bible as a source of history." In fact, archaeologist and Yale professor Miller Burrows wrote, "Archaeology has in many cases refuted the views of modern critics. It has shown in a number of instances that these views rest on false assumptions and unreal, artificial schemes of historical development. This is a real contribution and not to be minimized." Israeli archaeologist Abraham Buren fitly observed that archaeology is not here to prove or disprove the Bible. What archaeology does is make the references in the Bible a reality. Archaeology gives these references some bones and flesh. The Bible is a book of theology, revealing the nature and person of God. But it is much, much more. Unlike other religious books, the Bible is also a book of history. History that is proven reality. We believe the Bible by faith, but it is faith that is fortified with facts. Faith may be the spirit of Scripture, but archaeology is its flesh and bones.